Hi guys, today's lesson is with Mr. Tan. And today we will be looking at the BCG Matrix, developed first by Bruce Henderson in the 1970s. We're going to be looking at, its purpose and where it sits in the organizational structure in terms of strategy. We're going to try and explain the model and apply an example using Samsung. And then we also want to look at some of the disadvantages, and then we want you guys to download, if you haven't already, the Zapper app. So the BCG Matrix was first developed in the 1970s by Bruce Henderson, and he was working for the Boston Consultancy Group, so it was developed for that company. Sometimes, it is known as other things. It can be known as the growth share matrix, the Boston box, the product portfolio. And it is one of the oldest models around from the 1970s, as we've said. So it is quite controversial from one perspective because it's based on the 1970s and businesses from that time. And one could argue that, in today's business environment, it is a different type of environment and different companies operate in different ways. But nevertheless, I still believe it is a useful tool that can be used at a different level. The model itself is a 2x2 matrix, and the purpose of it is to determine, where to allocate resources, when to cash out, and when to divest in terms of strategic business units and business lines. And this is very, very important for a company. Hence the reason why I still believe it's still useful in today's environment. When we look at it, and the implementation of it, we're talking about the implementation of the BCG matrix at the corporate level and not at the other levels, which we're going to go on and discuss. So we imagine a pyramid and liken this to a company. The company would have 3 different levels. So at the bottom level, we're talking about the functional strategy at the bottom. And here we are saying, how do we support the business line, the strategy, and the functional departments in order to make that marketing strategy happen and meet your aims and objectives? In terms of the business strategy, we'll be using other models here, and the models that we will be using here would be things like Porter's 5 forces, which you've looked at before, or the value chain, or VRIO model. So these are some of the models in terms of the business strategy that will be looked at from the middle section of the pyramid. At the corporate level, this is where the BCG matrix comes into play. So here, the management must decide and know how to gain competitive advantage in each of their strategic business units. And this is about gaining competitive advantage, but also knowing which businesses they want to be in and which businesses they want to move away from. So if we use the example of Samsung, then what businesses, strategic business units and product lines should Samsung be in, and why should they be in those areas, in that market sector? So from a corporate level, they need to be deciding what should they be in, and why they want to be in there, and which direction they want to go. So when we're looking at the BCG matrix, we're saying to ourselves, this is going to be used at the corporate level to determine, where to invest in terms of the strategic business units. Should they invest in the cameras, or should they invest more in smartphones, or should they just focus on the TV business in terms of Samsung? So where should they invest their resources in order to get the maximum benefit for the company? So there are 2 factors that we use on the BCG matrix to plot the business, units within this model, and they relate to the competitiveness or the relative market share of the business in relation to other competition in that same market sector, which I'm going to show you later on how to calculate. And also the market attractiveness, which is about the market growth rate, which at the moment, according to Bruce Henderson, it was set at 10%, but in terms of a growth rate being high, being very good. So that was back then in the 1970s. It's not to say that a 5% growth rate will not be high in certain types of marketplaces. So we have to remember again that this model was based in the 1970s. So we can see that we have at the top of the model the relative market share. And is the relative market share high or low? And we have to calculate this in terms of market share. And again, I'll show you how to do that later. And then on the other side, we've got the market growth rate, and we're expecting, and we just expect for the time being, a market growth rate of around 10% to be very good in terms of if the market looks attractive or not in terms of the growth rate. Now we have the question marks. So products that are in the question mark can be seen to be an unknown quantity because it may or may not succeed. It has a relatively high growth rate, but in terms of its relative market share, the relative market share is not that high at the moment, and the question marks need lots of development. It needs lots of product development in terms of differentiation, perhaps in terms of innovation, in terms of marketing, investment in personnel, investment in marketing, in order to help it along its way onto the stars. But without that investment, it's not going to become a star by itself. So you do need the investment there, and this is what it's all about, is to determine where you should be investing in your strategic business units. With a star, now the stars, again, you spent lots of money, and it's probably come from the question marks into the stars. So now it's got a high market growth rate and a relatively high market share of 1 or above. And here the stars are now producing lots of revenue, but at the same time, in order to make them stars, you still need to continue with the investment, the marketing, the product differentiation, the investment in personnel, the investment in capital expenditures, innovation, and so on and so forth, in order to keep them as stars. Later on, and again, the BCG matrix is linked to the product lifecycle as well. So later on, the market growth rate starts to decline, but a relative market share means that the product or strategic business unit, because the amount of been invested in before, and you've got economies of scale, and you've got all the suppliers and everything, and all the personnel and all the assets already employed in that business, you're getting good profit margins. So it's generating lots of profitable cash, but you're not spending as much money on the cash cows now as you were in the stars. So this money then can be used for other areas in terms of the business. It could be used to fund, and should be used to fund, other new product ideas in the question marks. And the success of any business is the development of new products. The lifeblood of any company is the development of new products coming through all the time. And then we have the dogs. The dogs are have a relatively low market share, and they have a low growth rate. And here you have to decide, in terms of your strategic business unit, do you want to cash out? Do you want to divest? And so what do you want to do? And so this could be a strategy to divest or remove that part of the portfolio from the business. But it's not always necessarily the case that you should actually get rid of dogs, because sometimes you have a product line or a range of products, and sometimes you need certain dogs which can be classified as stocks within your range in order to support other product lines, which we will show as an example later. So let's go back to looking at the relative market share. So we know that from 1 to 10 is good. From 0.1 to 1 is not so good, so it's low. So to calculate the relative market share of a product, you need to divide its market share by the market share of the product's largest competitor. So let's take an example. So if we took your strategic business unit in that market sector being 10%, and you took your largest product's competitor being, say, 50%, so you divide your 10% market share by the 50%, which gives you 0.2 relative market share. So here we can see in this instance it's not that favorable. So now we can apply the BCG matrix to Samsung. So if we look at the bottom left, is the cash cow, and an example of the cash cow are the washing machines. The washing machines for Samsung has a low market growth but a relatively high market share. Why a relatively high market share? Because lots of investment and time have gone into which made these Samsung washing machines at one point a star, and from that star they gained economies of scale and expertise in terms of technological advancements, in terms of manufacturing processes and so on and so forth, to make this line profitable. So they gained all that, they haven't lost this. So now the market growth rate is not as much as it has been doing, so it becomes a cash cow, but it's still generating lots of revenue, which is profitable for the company. So if we look at the stars, then the stars can be seen like with Samsung's TV. Likewise with their mobile phones. Their mobile phones are extremely, profitable for the company. But again, lots of investment has gone in to, developing and innovating and marketing and product differentiation and the features. They have economies of scale and they have, product expertise, which is just excellent for the company. If we go now to the question marks, well, some of the question marks for Samsung includes their earphones, their printers, their virtual reality headsets. So what strategic business units should Samsung be going into? Will any of these be the future stars or not? So what should, from a corporate level, Samsung be investing in? Which product lines, which strategic business units, and why? If we think about the dog, then what would be a dog for Samsung? Well, a dog for Samsung can be seen with their, their smart watches, and their smart watches hasn't been as successful, even though they are technically advanced, but they've had strong competition from Apple and from other companies. But then should you actually get rid of these smart watches? Because one could say that if you got rid of these smart watches, then the link between their mobiles and the smart watches could actually have a negative effect on their mobile phones, because people could be buying the Samsung mobiles because they've got a smart watch. So if they get rid of these, then you maybe wouldn't be able to use the two together. You had a mobile phone and you wanted a smartwatch. So again, there are arguments for and against. And I think that the other thing to realize is that, in terms of market attractiveness, it's not just the market growth rate which makes the market attractive, as shown by the BCG matrix. But this is the BCG matrix, so they use the market growth rate and they use a guideline of 10%. So that's fine. But it's good to bear in mind that there are other variables that could make this market attractive. So just to recap, we know that this model is over 50 years old. It was produced by Bruce Henderson, who worked for the Boston Consultancy Group, hence the name, the BCG Matrix. We know that this is one of the oldest models, and it's really to do with determining where money should be invested into what strategic business units and what product lines. And we know that this is determining from a corporate level what should be done. So what should be done from a corporate level, not a business strategic level or functional level, but really at a corporate level. When to cash out, when to divest. And we know, as we said, it's based on a corporate level, but we also know that it's, based on market attractiveness in terms of market growth based on 10%, but it can be lower, and also relative market share. And the relative market share, is very, very important, because you need to determine how or if you have a competitive advantage over your other competitors, and all the way to work that out is by taking your market share by your biggest competitor's market share and dividing that, and then you will know where you sit. And the reason for the relative market share is because it gives you, one, economies of scale, because you can buy more at a better, more effective price, which gives you your gross profit margins, which will be increased. And also you would have developed technological product expertise, again gaining you better efficiencies and helping you to increase your net profit in the business. So I hope that has helped today from Mr. Tan. Require you to do is to download the Zapper app on your mobile, ideally, or on your tablet. And all you do is just go down to Google and you type in download Zapper, Z-A-P-P-A-R, Zapper app, and then Google will come up with this little red box with the yellow lightning flash in the middle and black outer, and it will come up with this Zapper app here, and you can just click on install, and then it will install it on your device if it's on your mobile. And then once you've installed this on your mobile, all you need to do is then open it and then scan it over the barcode, and this will lead you to additional homework that we would like you to complete. Many thanks today, again from Mr. Tan.